The Weight Loss Behavior Stages of Change scale is a measure used by Dartmouth College in many of its health promotion studies. Since it is a subjective questionnaire that involves asking the client about his or her eating and physical activity behaviors and then recording their responses, it involves some skill on the interviewer's part. In this instructional video, I will review some basic interviewing skills and reminders. There will also be a couple of demonstrations showing good interviewing skills, as well as how to handle a few common scenarios that might occur when administering the questionnaire. These first couple of slides go over what to review with the client before you start the interview. While these bullet points are good practices, no matter who your employer is, your agency might have additional details for you to review, so you should check in about that if you haven't yet. First, it's important to orient your client to the interview. Explain the purpose of the interview. Is it an assessment to measure their progress? Is it to assess eligibility to join a program, etc.? Also, explain your relationship. You are the interviewer and have no judgments about their responses. They are the interviewee. You may wish to acknowledge another role you have with the client and how the relationship during the interview is set apart from that. Also remind them about their responsibility, which is to make their best effort in responding to the items on the questionnaire. Your responsibility is to facilitate this. You'll want to review confidentiality policies at your agency, such as what is grounds for breaking confidentiality and how their information will be protected and who will have access to it. Since being asked questions about personal behaviors is a sensitive topic for many, it's also important to remind them that there are no right or wrong answers, and that they should just answer as honestly and accurately as possible. Remind the client that they can ask you to repeat a question if they misunderstood or didn't hear. Also remind them that they can refuse to answer any question that makes them uncomfortable. Lastly, make sure your client is comfortable before starting the interview and remind them that they can take breaks and should tell you if they need anything.
Okay, so this next questionnaire that we're going to do goes over current eating practices. And then there's also a section at the end that will go over your usual physical activities.
Okay.
So before we begin, I just want to explain how the scale works. So these are the possible responses you can give to the questions that I ask.
Okay.
It takes a little bit of getting used to. So this questionnaire is set up in terms of what you do at least half the time or not.
Okay.
So if you don't do something at least half the time, your answer is going to be 1, 2, or 3. So 1 is you do not do this at least half the time and you have no plans on starting it right now. 2 is you do not do this at least half the time, but you're thinking about doing it sometime in the next 6 months. 3 is you don't do it at least half the time, but you're making definite plans to start doing it within the next month. Okay. 4 and 5 are what you would pick if you do something at least half the time. So 4 you would pick if you do it at least half the time and you just started doing it within the last 6 months, so it's a newer behavior. 5 is you've been doing it for more than 6 months.
Okay.
So it takes a little getting used to this questionnaire and using this scale, so let's just go over the first questions, a couple questions to practice.
Okay.
Do you limit how much you eat so you don't eat more calories than you need?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I do that at least half the time. So that's 4 or 5.
right.
I've been doing that more than 6. It's number 5.
So 5 is you've been doing it at least half the time for more than 6 months.
Yeah.
That sounds right? Okay. All right, next one. Do you weigh and measure your portions of food?
I never weigh. I sometimes measure.
Would you say you do it at least half the time or not?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
Less than half the time.
Okay, so then your answer is going to be 1, 2, or 3.
I'd say I'm thinking about doing it sometime in the next 6 months. Number 2.
Okay, so you don't do it at least half the time, but you're thinking about doing it sometime in the next 6 months.
Yeah, number 2.
Okay. All right. Are you getting the hang of how the scale works a little bit?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. All right. Keep going then.
The next few slides review important skills for an interviewer to have. The first skill is maintaining a positive affect in order to facilitate cooperation. If your body language and expression or mood indicates that you are bored or short-tempered, this will have a much different effect on the interview than if you come across as eager and interested. Next, remain neutral. This is so important and one that is easily forgotten because it is a natural tendency to want to put a fellow human being at ease if they seem anxious. For example, if they report not doing a healthy eating behavior, it's very easy to want to rationalize it to make them feel better. Oh, I completely understand. I hate light salad dressing too. Instead, if they tell you they don't like salad dressing, just say, okay, next question. It can also be hard to stay away from the role of educator or evaluator. They might say something like, oh, I snack on peanuts, but I thought eating lots of nuts was good. It isn't? You'll want to prevent yourself from educating them. Well, nuts are super high in fat and calories, and it's easy to lose track if you're not paying attention. If they ask you a question about their behavior, just say, I'm not sure, or remind them that there is no judgment in this interview, and it's only important that they are as honest and accurate as possible. Again, neutrality is a tough one to master, and at times can feel awkward, but just remind yourself that by being neutral, you're not influencing the responses they give. Several interviewing skills have to do with sticking to the questions as they are and not embellishing, clarifying, or leading the client. For example, you should always read the questions in the order they are listed, not skip any questions, and read them exactly as they are stated, word for word. In the same vein, you don't want to interpret questions, especially if a client is confused about what a word or question means and would like you to explain. You have to resist that urge. You can repeat the question as many times as they need you to. You can also remind them that whatever they think the question means, that's how they should interpret it, and there is no right or wrong answer. Sometimes confusion or indecision will make you want to help them make a decision, which is another natural tendency you'll have to resist. Even if you know the client fairly well and think the answer you have for them is accurate, it's important that the answer comes from them, because a particular answer should not rely on a particular interviewer. The following video demonstrates a scenario in which the client is unsure of how to respond and asks for the interviewer's opinion. You can note how the interviewer emphasizes that it is the client's decision, as well as draws their attention to the scale choices without influencing or interpreting the response.
Okay, next question. Do you eat low-fat dairy products such as skim or 1% milk, low-fat yogurt, and low-fat cheese?
Well, I drink skim milk, but none of the other things. And low-fat cheese just seems horrible.
Well, what would you say you do at least half the time?
Well, at least half the time I drink skim milk, but less than half the time the rest of... So, what should I say there?
Well, you're the expert of you, so you know yourself better than I do. So whatever you think the right answer is, that's the answer we should go with.
I guess I drink more milk than I have other kinds of... So I guess at least half the time. But I'll go with number 5.
5. Okay, next question.
If the client is experiencing positive or negative psychiatric symptoms, use your best judgment on the appropriate course of action. It might be that slowing down and checking in with the client or asking what would be helpful to them is enough to get through the interview. However, you might feel that the quality of the interview is suffering, and as a result, should request to reschedule with the client. Make sure you alert someone at the agency, such as the client's case manager, if the client seems to be particularly uncomfortable, agitated, or in danger of harming themselves or others. Another good skill is to regularly reinforce the effort put into the interview and not the performance. For example, if a client starts elaborating on a behavior when responding to a question, you might say something like, "Hey, I can see you're really trying to think this through. Why don't we look at the scale items again and see which number best corresponds now?" You don't want to say something like, "If you spend this much time answering, we'll be here all day," or, "Wow, it's great how quickly you're moving through these questions." Responses like that can alter the course of the interview, whereas reinforcing effort will encourage the client regardless of performance. Lastly, you may notice occasions in which a client's response directly contradicts another response given earlier. To get as accurate data as possible, these contradictions should be checked, but not in a way that places fault on the client. In fact, a helpful tactic is to place fault on yourself as the interviewer. The following video demonstrates how to successfully correct a contradiction without alienating the client.
Okay, next question. Do you eat at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day?
5.
Do you eat at least 3 servings of green vegetables, such as broccoli, green beans, or spinach every day?
3.
3. When given a choice, do you pass up the fries and order the vegetables instead?
2.
Do you eat at least 2 servings of fruit every day?
3.
Okay. So before we continue, I just want to back up a little bit and go over a couple of the questions that I just asked. So when I asked you the question, do you eat at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day? I wrote down 5, which would mean that you've been doing that at least half the time for more than 6 months. But then I thought when I asked about do you eat at least 3 servings of green vegetables every day, and do you eat at least 2 servings of fruit every day, I thought I heard you say 3 for each of those, which means you don't do them at least half the time, but you'd like to start doing it in the next month. So I just want to make sure that I have that first question correct about eating at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day.
Yeah, I used to do that. I want to do it. I put 3 for all of them.
Okay, so that's something you want to start doing.
Yeah, it's something I want to start doing.
Okay, so the 5 for the first question, do you eat at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day?
3.
That should be a 3. Okay. Okay, next question.
In conclusion, it is helpful to practice interviewing skills as much as possible. The more you practice, the more you will get comfortable wearing your interviewer's hat. Of course, a multitude of situations and interviews could come up that this training video does not address. If you are not sure how to score an item or handle a situation that arises, please get in touch with your Dartmouth contact. Good luck!